Today's a good day. Going fishing here in Georgia at a lake that's got some giants in it. So, cross your fingers, or cross my fingers, we'll get a hold of a couple of those big ones. At least one. It would tickle me. I'm going to take you with me, and we'll see what we can do. Wish me luck.
We'll talk about this little setup right here. What I do is I put me a bobber stopper, sinker stopper, whatever you call it, on every time I do a Texas rig. That's just what I prefer to do. But what I do a little different is I put a bobber stopper on the bottom right on top of my knot also. Because this is tungsten steel and it's dragging through the brush. It's just steadily pulling and pulling and pulling. And when it pulls on it, it actually weakens the knot. Even though this is 50-pound braid, that steel will cut it. And this is a high quality. This is actually a Strike King tungsten steel sinker, but still sometimes they'll just wear your knot out. So that's what I do to try to protect that knot, because your knot's like the most important thing you can have. And I'm throwing a big 12-inch worm to mainly try to just get to the big ones. And I'll probably end up switching to my money bait, which is a 6.5-inch airtail wiggler by Grande Bass. That's just my confidence bait. But I'm hoping using this 12-inch worm, I'll just play with the big girls. And plus it gives them something different to look at. Not everybody throws a 12-inch worm. And I've said on videos before to always watch your line, and I didn't really elaborate on that. What you want to do is watch your line when you cast and you let it sink. Your line will stay like steadily moving, and then once it hits bottom, it'll go slack. That's how you know you're on bottom. Also, a lot of these fish will pick the bait up and you not even know it. And you're just pulling like normal and your line will be going sideways. So that's what I mean by watching your line when you're fishing a Texas rig. The water temp's 71 degrees, which is nice. And I'm sitting in about 9 foot of water, and the bank actually drops off real quick. And there's lots of structure, trees that fell off this bank into the water. And most of the times they hold here. But I am fishing. I have an app I go by, and that app showed poor fishing for today. It's not too often you beat it. When you're fishing a Texas rig, a lot of times you'll just feel a bump or doo-doo. When I feel that, I like to ease up on the rod just a little and see if I can feel that fish swimming with it. If it does, that's when you cross their eyes. Okay, we done talked about Texas rigging. Looks like this is going to be a teaching video instead of a catching video. So now with a crankbait, let's talk about it. Don't be scared to throw a crankbait in the brush or treetops. For one, if it hits the treetop, that lure hits it and bounces off of it, a lot of times it triggers a strike. For two, a crankbait is more weedless than what you believe, or what most people believe. And when you're fishing a crankbait, it's good to have a rod, medium rod with some action in it. It keeps you don't lose as many with a softer rod than you do with a stiff rod. So I just hit a brush pile in, and it come right up through it. And just have a lure retriever with you if you get stuck. You know, most crankbaits are anywhere from $3 to $50 now or more. We'll just have a lure retriever where you drop down and get your lure back. Can't fish scared. And when you're throwing a crankbait, especially a big crankbait, right there's about where you're at, or right here. when you rear back and throw. So that rubbing on the eye gets bad, burns your line. So you have to feel that every once in a while and check, make sure you don't, see if you need to retie or not. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to vary your retrieve. Reel it steady one time. Next time, reel it, stop. Reel it, pause. Reel it faster than that one time. Reel it slow, and find out what they're keying on. And you will get hung. But it's okay. I just run over a tree again. That time I think I got hung. A lot of times that throws the bait off. Didn't happen that time. Let's go get our lure. I feel like I'm with somebody's fishing line. Nope, I was on a knot. Damn. See it come up. Okay, so I fished this deep bank. With a big worm, worked it slow, come through with a crankbait, and haven't had no luck. So I'm gonna go down the grass line and throw a whopper flopper. All right, now let me take, while we're here, let me show you Texas rig. For the big worm, I like using a hook. This has a worm keeper on it. It's a trocar hook. I forget what size it is. 3/0. I'm not sure about the size. Well, what you want to do, I stick it in to the end right there, end of my hook, the straight part. Stick it in and come straight out with it. You're gonna work it all the way around and put it up on your hook and put it in that keeper. That helps you when you're dragging through brush and other stuff, keeps the hook up where it's supposed to be. If the hook gets balled down on this, a lot of times it'll ball down when you're setting the hook or whatever, and it's harder to get the hook in a fish's mouth because it's got worm in the way, in the gap. So there you go. Got my worm up. What I like to do with this big worm, I like to bring my hook all the way through, such as that. Then I want to come up, pinch it, and put the tip of my hook back in that worm. Now I can drag that over brush for the most part and not get hung through treetops. But when the fish bites it and you set the hook, then the fish is clamped down. It just has a little bit of plastic that go through instead of half the worm. That's the reason I do it. One of the main things you want to do when you're Texas rigging is you want this worm straight. And that's just about as straight as it comes. You don't want it to come through the water like this. It twists your line up. It's just aggravating. And I've been told this since I was a kid. My dad brought me up Texas rig fishing, and that's the way to do it right there. And a whopper popper is basically crankbait style, floats with a little tail that spins and pops the water. Yeah, almost like a buzzbait-ish. If you do get fortunate enough to get a bite on a whopper popper or any top water, you want to wait till you feel the fish before you set the hook. A lot of times they'll hit at it, take the bait under the water, but they don't have it. And then when you jerk it out of the strike zone, fish are gone. Or if you wait and the fish hits at it, misses it, the lure floats back up, you keep on reeling it, and a lot of times they'll come back for that second hit. If you're wondering what I'm fishing on today, I'm fishing on the Vibe Kayaks Maverick. It's a hybrid between a paddleboard and a kayak. I've got a Larry chair on it. Larry chair is just a brand name chair called Larry chair. And it's very comfortable. This boat is stable. I like how I can take a crankbait and go down a 200-yard stretch and barely touch my paddle. I can pull it with the crankbait. I also like that I can just take a few correction strokes, not even strokes, just little paddles, just small paddles, and straighten the kayak the way I want it. It's a fun boat. It's a perfect throw and go boat also. I mean, it's so easy to load and unload, strap down. It's foam filled, roto molded. So it's rigid. You can even strip it's a high density foam in it. You can strip the outside layer off of it and actually fish on the styrofoam, because that was part of the process when making this boat, is doing the foam shape first and trying it out. Let's talk about rod choices for a kayak. Something to consider is a lot of rods are bigger in diameter here, and a lot of those rods are hollow. They're hollow. This rod, for instance, hope it shows up. But this rod, if you turn the kayak over, knock it off in the water, it floats. I have 2 or 3 rods like that. I don't really like dunking my reels like that, but I was going to illustrate. I've got I got 3 or 4 of them. I got the Skeet Reese heavy crankbait rod. It floats. I've got the KVD crankbait rod. It floats. This is the Carbon Light, Bass Pro Shops Carbon Light. It floats. And that's really nice to know. In hindsight, when I put in this morning, well, I didn't have but 2 hours to fish. Saw fish close to the boat ramp. In hindsight, what I should have done, and who knows, that might not have worked either, was went to the backs of the creek. Because the back of the creek holds a lot of times the bait in the fall when the water starts cooling off. The bait fish go there, and when they go there, the game fish follow them. So it goes to show you. But if you fish, you know. You don't catch them every time you go fishing. So I hope I left you with a few things. Maybe if you don't know, maybe you picked up on a few things. But now I've got to load up and get out of here.